prepared to talk about or can talk about. So what he actually decided to talk about, I don't know, because the list he had would have lasted a week. So Todd, please come. Okay, can you hear me out there? Okay, good. All right, that's great. I was just, with Jim's meditation, I began to think my brain was like a blender. And I've been having a lot of fun this year. I make these smoothies in the morning, and I throw in some celery, some apples, some peanuts, some coconut, stuff, and I throw in some cocoa powder, and I throw in some cinnamon, and a bunch of ice cubes, and some milk, or whatever it is, and I just turn the button on, and it turns away, and I added some honey, because I'm a sweet guy, and so I have to have my sweets, But anyway, my brain feels like this. See, Jim gave me an invitation, which is unusual. It said, hey, I know you think about a lot of other things besides the lake and water and villages, why don't you, put together some ideas on what you're thinking about in a global way. And I'm not much different than a lot of you. I mean, you people here are strange people, okay? I mean, we're all strange people. Who in their right mind would read the newspaper and get on a plane and come to Mexico, okay? I mean, you people are what I call adventuresome people. You're risk-taking people. You're overly educated people. You're maybe sort of non-aging people, okay? So, when you think about all that, I know you think about some of the things I think about. So, I walked around here some to talk to people to find out what we might talk about. I've gotten some feedback on the email, and everybody's, of course, interested a little bit about the lake because they know I sort of live in the lake, okay? Or around there. And they're also interested in politics and what's going on with the country and what's coming up with the election on 7 June. They're interested in the economics of Mexico. Right? So I have about 12 topics, but I'm going to try and focus into those. One strange topic I might throw in there are pensions, because around the world I see most of the first world countries are financially being crippled right now by facing the prospect of pensions. Okay? And that affects us in the U.S., and I imagine for you in Canada, you probably have some of the same challenge that a long time ago we promised more than we could deliver, and the investment return on our investment has not been too good in recent years, and we have to squeeze people somewhere. But anyway, let me first start off with the lake itself. The lake is in good shape, okay? I mean, all of our desire would be that the lake would be full. It has not been full in 35 years. It will not be full in my lifetime, okay? And the reason is that I think the powers that be understand now that if we keep the lake at some level, the water in the lake is of a quality that is sufficient for purifying, for drinking water for Guadalajara. 2.5 million people drink the water there every day. And I have put a lot of papers out, a lot of mathematical kind of data and charts. I sent that to Governor Aristoteles Sandoval here last year or so. And the people in SEA, which is the water office, grabbed it up quick and pulled it away so he wouldn't see it, I think. Because although they are the state water people, their paycheck comes from the feds. And so the feds, of course, have a lot of other agendas going on here that have to do with the lake. So the bottom line is that everything I can see from data I can find for 20 years is that when the lake gets down to 30% full, various contaminants in it raise to a level then that it doesn't pass any specification. Okay? So the lake right now is about 44%. Okay? It's about 13.2 feet lower than full, and it's been up around 50% some of the past couple months. And so that's where it is. I expect greater than normal rain this year, you know, in the Lerma Basin, because it's not, I mean, the water comes in the lake that rains here is only 10% of the water, okay? 10% falls locally and drains the lake. 90% of the water in the lake has to come from the Lerma River, which has, you know, 4 other states with over 500 dams that are holding back potentially every drop of the river, okay? And so it is totally political what they can release, right? You know, in the original times, you know, I talk about my friend Fred Flintstone. You know, the lake would totally change its water every year and a half. Okay, so I was thinking that if I was going to open the dams up, I would not want to open them up faster than a fill that would take 1.5 years, because probably the waterway might get, it would flood the banks. Okay, and so. You know, if I was put in charge of the country tomorrow, I could, you know, fill the lake up, but it'd be about 1.5 years is what I would plan on doing. And so to accommodate other people, I like to recommend 10 years. You know, and that way farmers can adjust, because 80% of the water is used very poorly by the farmers. And for every 1% of the 80% that we can put somewhere else, we can have water for 500,000 people. So it's either 500,000 people or 1% more for the farmers, like that. Okay. So basically, we can give the history a little bit. Up till 1929, the lake was getting the full flow of the Lerma River. By 1990, it was down to 10%. Okay? But everything you read in the newspapers, whether they're in English or Spanish, said, oh, it's a bad year for rain. Okay? But I'm telling you, there's a difference, folks, between 90 or 100% and 10%. There's a big difference, okay? And in the years from 1990 to now, there were several years, I think 6, when no water at all came to the lake. Okay? So it's totally, you know, that kind of control. The big error around here among the people is that Guadalajara drinks all the water in the lake. And I think those of you who know me well enough know that it's about this much water, 1 foot of water, that comes off the lake each year to take care of 2.5 million people. Okay? 1 foot. That's what they take. I would like to have the lake be a source of water for the 300,000 people around the lake, because many of the villages I work in, they had deep wells in volcanic rock. Some of those wells have boiling water, and there's problems with arsenic and lead. Okay. Our nearest neighbor, Chapala, has 6 of the 8 wells here, which are over the limits in arsenic. You know, but they don't tell the people. If I get down to San Pedro Itzican, a ways down the lake here, there are 5,000 people. They're over in lead. Okay, and the water is boiling when it comes out of the ground. The water is boiling. If I go down the lake, you can sit in the lake like the ladies do washing clothes, and you can get, you know, warm water or cooler water, depending on where you move around, you know, as you wash your laundry, as the water boils out of the lake with you. But I would like to see, in long-term, use of the lake. It would take about 1 inch of the lake per year to provide all the water for 300,000 people around the lake. One of the unknowns is that this much water goes to Guadalajara, okay, that there's about this much water going to Guadalajara that nobody talks about, which is coming out of the corner of the lake, the northeast corner, near Ocotlán. There's a building there the size of a football field full of big pumps. And so they've been pumping water out of the lake and over the gate, because the water, again, hasn't been high enough to flow out by gravity for 35 years. And so they're pumping it out into the Rio Santiago River via the Rio Zulu to provide irrigation, because CONAGO, the federal people, can sell concessions. And so the way they get 40% of their budget is by selling water to you, and you, and then they sell it again to you, and you. And then they get the money, and then you guys can fight over the water. But that water that irrigates all that, if you go on the other side of the mountain, you'll see a lot of fields out there, a lot of, in the valley, around in Municipio Ponce. That's all irrigated water from Lake Chapala. Okay, basically Guadalajara's choices are, right now 60% of the water comes from Lake Chapala, 20% comes from the Chapaladrone Dam, which is off to the east, and the other 20% comes from old wells and things like that around the city. They've been talking a lot in recent years about building the Zapatilla Dam on the Verde River, which flows down the Guadalajara. And that thing's been in litigation for about 3 or 4 years as they've been building it. They are now up to the basic design level, about 85 meters. They were supposed to go to a higher level, and if they went to the higher level, then there would be water for Jalisco. And so the court right now has said, you know, we're not going to let you go any higher. So that means that the hopes of bringing water for 1 million people to Guadalajara via the higher dam are out right now. Okay? So Jalisco is bypassing the federal government right now and going to a UN group and trying to get the UN to wade in and help support that. But right now, the Zapatilla water for 1 million people is off the table. So again, the real future of Guadalajara, the 5 million people there, later to be 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, all of the water for those people will have to come from the lake. And it can come from the lake. As you can imagine, if 1 foot takes care of 5 million people, 2 foot would take care of 10 million people. It's all possible. But it's politically, you know, held. Okay, good. All right. Let me get off of that. One of the topics that came in the email was security, and that's an easier, briefer one because I'm no expert in security. Okay, but I'd say this, that this year I've been working a lot in Ponce de Leon, which is a county to the east of here, and in the last 4 months I've been working on 22 projects in 10 villages, and I put together a design for 44 million pesos of work on water, wastewater, and other kind of projects for those villages. And in doing that, I drove about 8,000 kilometers. And so I've been back and forth over the mountain, around the mountain, and up and down these roads. And so I have some sense of security, you know, if you're thinking about that. Basically, we have with the return of the Free Party, which is now in power, we have sort of returned to some of the ills the PRI had before. The PRI was in power for 70 years, from 1929. You know, everybody was fighting with everybody after the revolution, which ended in 1920, but it took them 9 years to pick somebody, and so they formed what was the PRI Party, and that party then shut out everybody else for 70 years. And then in the year 2000, the PAN Party on the right came into power with Vicente Fox, former president of Coca-Cola, and then later his, I think it was his Minister of Finance, Felipe Calderon, took the next six years of the presidency. So we had 12 years in there, and this last election, the country returned back to the PRI. And there were a lot of glorious promises. There were some wonderful coalitions of the PRI Party, the PAN Party, and the PRD. They agreed on like 5 things they'd work on. But the people that I talk to every day in the villages say they see nothing happening. Okay? And so when it comes to security, things have increased, you know, on the drug cartel front, and things have increased as far as corruption. Things have increased in modifying what the press writes about, and things have increased in using the Army and the federal police to put down opposition. And so we have an environment which is more volatile, I guess I'd say. You know, we saw in Coatland, I think there were about 50 people that were you know, shot up here about a month or so ago. And a few days ago, we had 43 people killed over in Michoacan. And these are fighting factions, okay? They're not looking for old folks like you and I. You know, and, but anyway, we have in this area, we have the new generation Jalisco cartel, okay? Which was to hold power in this area, and they're being, you know, challenged by the Knight Templar people from Michoacan, and then there's the Zetas, you know, the former military people that were trained to try and protect the country, you know, who are running the third group of violence out there. And so those operations out there, I guess the newer thing I learned this year is that, and again, the federal police are fighting with the state police, okay? It turns out, and here I am, an engineer, and my eyeballs are, focused on certain things. It turns out each of these groups has a type of music, okay? Well, like when I came here, there was a lot of Nortenia, and then there's some Banda, and so as a car rides on up to a checkpoint, the CD that's playing in there is supposed to tell the checkpoint who they belong to. See, I never knew that before, okay? So my suggestion was you carry 6 or 7 CDs. Hey, George, put number 4 in quick, So, I don't know what to say with security. I mean, I go out every day, and I usually drive, a 30-year-old ugly Toyota, that I bought for $500 and 13 years ago, and I sold it last week for $400. I sold it to a mechanic because my radiator came apart, and he welded together, and I could see he was really poor, and I said, hey, I'll sell it to you for $500. And he gave me $500. I said, here's $100 back, And so anyway, I lost my little ugly Toyota. But when I drive in the village with an ugly car, nobody wants to, nobody, what's he have? I guess some money in his pocket maybe. But and then I usually wear, a Dickies jumpsuit, one that you pick up the garbage with, And so I always feel like, it's going. This is the happiest chapter of my life, working with the people in villages. I said I was working with a lot of villages this year, holding a lot of meetings in the plaza at night with people, going to their houses for surveys and doing things like this. And I'll tell you how great it can be, okay? I mean, in the villages I've been, I have 2 villages that want to give me a house if I'll come live there. I have another village that wants to give me a key to the village, okay? And so, what was the third thing I was thinking? Oh, another village wants to put a statue in the plaza in me. And 3 or 4 villages in their mind are not sure whether or not I am the resurrected, Juan Pablo II. My face comes, especially with the sun, just my eyes closed, And so, I was at a meeting over in San Pedro Isticon, and my translator, was somebody got up and he was a political fellow and said, "Are you here for political reasons?" No, this is So anyway, he was sort of a negative guy, and so my translator, after answering his question, he sort of quietly, with a lower voice, said, "This is Juan Pablo II." And after the meeting, a lady came up to me with her 3 kids who wanted to be blessed. So how much better can it get? I want to stay here really the rest of my life. Well, anyway. Let me see if I can say anything here. Okay. Well, what I want to touch on here in a major way is, at least my view of Mexico from an economic perspective. What it looks like today and where I think it's going. Because we live here, and most of you people are more permanent because you're here in May. And May is when they turn the oven on. And so you have to be permanent, or else you wouldn't be here. But anyway, Mexico is a very interesting kind of place. And when I work with people in the village, my view is a bit modified because if you can see these people in the village, they have no jobs. Sometimes they have no land. They're hanging on the side of the mountain. They have a little bit of chayote, and they have a little bit of chorale, and now they're growing marijuana down by the lake. I stumble into it once in a while. And then there's some meth labs that are evolving to fill out the economy. But these people are, well, they distrust the government intensely. Okay? These people think the War of Independence in 1810 was over last month. Okay? They think the Revolution of 1910 was over last week. All right? They don't see the government as saying anything truthful or providing anything they promise or anything like that. And so, you know, that's sort of why my statue goes in the closet. But anyway, we had the War of Independence, and you know, of course, it started with lots of people trying to get independent, and it eventually built up with enough people. And at the particular time that it sort of broke loose, there was a civil war basically inside of Spain. So Spain was a bit crippled at that time. It was a good time for the Mexicans to break out, and then we had, you know, a series of heroes. And around here, if you look at the street names, you'll see names like Hidalgo, 16th of September. You know, he starts the revolution or the independence in Guanajuato, and then there's Guadalupe Victoria, another street. Vicente Guerra, Javier Mina, you know, so there are a lot of names like this. Okay, come on. Okay, so we lost 10% of the people died in that war. And so it's a pretty, you know, difficult thing upon the people here. But basically, it was peasants that were fed up with aristocrats and big landowners doing everything and then being slaves. And so we went on for a couple of years, and then we got a president by the name of Porfirio Diaz, who took over for 35 years, and he basically sort of went back into that area of, you know, much less for the common people and more for the other people, and then that brought on the revolution. Okay, the revolution is in 1910, it goes to 1921. Like I said, the Pre-Party evolves as the leader by 1929. In the 26 to 29 period, we had the Cristero War. Jalisco is the most Catholic state in the country, and when the government was in this revolution, one of the things they were doing, they wanted to remove the power of the Catholic Church. And of course, there were other people who wanted to keep the Catholic Church, and they're called the Cristeros, which are the warriors of Christ. And so there were 50,000 of them here in the state, 5,000 women, and so in these villages that I work with, mostly in the mountains, you know, I find Cristeros, okay? They're still there, and they were advised by the French and the Germans, and that's where you find red hair and blue eyes, up in those areas. But anyway, we went on, and like I say, we've had pre for 70 years, we had PON for 12 years, and now we're back to pre. A little bit of the government. You have a 6-year term if you're Enrique Peña Nieto and you're married to a novella star. Okay? If you're Sandoval, Aristotle is Sandoval as a governor, you have a 6-year term. Okay. If you're a senator, I believe in the federal government or the state government, you have a 6-year term. But if you're in the House of Representatives in the feds or the state, it's a 3-year term. If you're a county president, it's a 3-year term. If you're a delegado, it's a 3-year term. Okay, and so we're right now, you know, on one of the 3-year cycles. We're changing people. We have an election coming up on 7th June. We have 9 parties running right now. Okay? 9 parties, and so it's pretty interesting to see how this evolves. There are 3 major parties in Mexico: the PRD, which is the left, which basically is where a lot of university students who think the world's going to be better tomorrow morning live. The PRI says it's in the middle, okay, and the PON says it's on the right, okay, and it's more for business and things like that. And so during the PON 12 years, there was a great increase in development of business, and more so international trade ties. Mexico right now has more free trade agreements in the world than the USA. It has 40 trade agreements. And so there's been an enormous increase in the economy during that period of time. And so we're anxious to see what happens to the economy now as we go to another 3 years of the PRI. But anyway, we have other parties out there. We have the Verde Party, green, and they usually go to the highest bidder. And so they used to be pon, and then they became pre. And right now, because the pre-party, I'm one of these guys going to fall off the stage. The pre-party, at least in this area, does not have a good reputation. Okay, and so Governor Sandoval decided that he would ask the county governors here to put a green guy in front, a Verde Party guy in front. And so all the counties here are supposed to put up a green guy, but you know, his shadow is really pre, okay? And so every one of them, as I can see, cooperated. In Hocotepec, one of my better friends, Jesus Palace, is coming back to run for president of Hocotepec. In the last 3 years, he's been a deputado in the state, okay? And he's a good guy. And, but he has a Verde face, and so he'll succeed there. But here in Chapala, the pre people opposed that direction from the governor, and so they're running a pre-candidate here, as well as a Verde candidate. And then there's Conferencia, which now is called Movimiento out there. You know, you can see, you saw a lot of white and orange signs pop up about 2 months ago, illegally early, because there's a time schedule where you can do certain things in the political system. But you know, my feedback is most of that's drug money, and so here they're down around 4th or 5th place in the election right now. And so in the election in Chapala, it looks like looks like Pri, Moreno, and then Movimiento in that order today, as far as what's going to happen. And so I expect Javier Degollado to win. And I worked a lot with his brother Gerardo, and I did some very good projects in Jalisco. Probably the biggest one was a 24-inch diameter sewer that went through 3 kilometers of the city to pick up all the wastewater that was being dumped in the streets and in San Marcos Arroyo. And so I hope to work with Javier. The last two presidents here did not want my help on any projects, okay? And so I was disappointed in that, and so that's why I sold myself to Poncelon, okay? In Poncelon, I've been working for a great president, and the guy to follow him that I'm supporting happens to run the biggest candy factory. And so I have two major requests when I work with people. I don't ask for money, but I ask for chocolate and a boro. And so I now found the chocolate, okay? But nobody's taking me serious yet on the boro, because these villages I go to after I get tired trying to climb around. Okay, let's talk here first about Mexico. Mexico is a great nation with great potential. It's a nation, however, where the greatness is not evenly shared across the population. That's one of the big challenges. And so I'm going to read you a list of what I say are the positive things and then the negative things, because it'll be faster than talking. And by the way, if you haven't gotten an email from me, like to come to this meeting, and you'd like to know what I'm doing or see it in my papers, I have 2 figures, these are the short ones here, that I type with about 1,000 pages a year, and so I put out lots of stuff. If you want anything from me, give me your email and I'll send you information. Okay, of the 200 nations in the world, Mexico is 11 for GDP, okay? For economy. This is a big economy, making a lot of things, exporting a lot of things. 11 in the world, okay? It's close to France and Germany, okay? You would not believe that, would you? No. No, because you drive down the road and you see some of the other indicators, and it doesn't look like 11 in the world. Okay. By 2050, they expect Mexico will be 6th in the world. We'll move from 11 up to 6, okay? All right, and they'll start passing a number of EU countries. The debt in Mexico is about 40% of the GDP. And if you know anything about the rest of the world, we have a lot of countries that are struggling over 100% debt to their GDP. In the United States, we're running about 75%. I think Canada is a little bit less than us. Canadians know? Anybody know the GDP?
40.
Huh?
40.
40. Okay, so 40, that's a good percentage. But Mexico never got involved in the housing, and derivatives kind of problem we had a couple of years ago, where you know, we had a balloon in the burst and then all this money flooded out. So they avoided that kind of business. Mexico is the largest nation in California, is the largest nation in Latin America. For all Latin America, Mexico is #1 for import and export. So you probably wouldn't guess that. Incredible. Come on. Are you serious? No, I had to talk fast. Okay. All right. Mexico exports 90% of what it makes to the USA and Canada. Okay? They import 55%. Mexico's DINA is the #1 maker of buses for the whole world. They come out of here. Mexico produces more automobiles now than Canada and the United States. Right? You probably didn't know that. All right. They don't just simply assemble parts. 70% of the automobile parts are designed and made here. Okay? All right? You know, each year, Mexico graduates 100,000 electronic engineers. All right? And they're very much involved in the automotive industry because it's very much computerized. But they also have made Mexico the #1 maker of TVs for the world. Ahead of China and Korea, places like that. The largest construction company in the world, Cemex, is here in Mexico. They're also the #3 company for cement in the whole world. Okay? They're also the #2 for drinking Coca-Cola. And so I don't know if I should put this on the plus side or not, but this is the big reason why they're #1 for diabetes. Right? Now, the oil industry, Pemex, is always been in decline. I mean, they nationalized oil companies in Mexico in 1938, and they took them over, and ever since they just been sucking money out of them. Okay, they tax oil about 60%. Goes to the federal government so they can run the other programs, and so the oil infrastructure has been going downhill. I mean, even when I came here 13 years ago, pipelines were breaking, refineries were shutting down. You know, and they don't have the technology for drilling and all that, and the left party, the PRD, would not let them bring back any foreign countries to help. So right now, but it's still in 6th place. Okay, on the negative side, there's a significant division between urban, 75%, 25% rural people in the country. #2, there's a division between the north of Mexico and the south. South is poor, north is rich. And there's a big divide between the rich and the poor, okay? The rich and the poor, a big divide. Challenges include income inequality, anti-new business labor laws, onerous government permits, which need grease to get, very poor education, substandard infrastructure, and mostly wastewater. I mean, Mexico calls sanitation having your toilet flush and go somewhere. It has nothing to do with treating it, okay? But that's their definition of sanitation. There's problems with rural water, with roads. There's a problem with the distance between jobs and workers. And one of the things that happens there is, different parts of the government have funded, this contractor here, he looks a little shady, right? And he builds a big development, 10 miles outside of town, and there's no bus to get there, and he forgets to put the water and sewer line in for it, okay? Oh, no. And so we have a 35% deficit in housing needed by the country, but we got 5 million housing units built, but nobody's in them. That's the kind of thing that comes from corruption. Where am I at here? Although Mexico is 11 in GDP, okay, in GDP per capita, they are 55 nations lower. They are number 66 for the money being spread among the people. Right. In the U.S. and Canada, the difference between our GDP position and our GDP per capita is 9 points different. Okay, but in Mexico, it's 55 points different. A big spread in where the money goes in Mexico. The vast majority of industry and banking in Mexico is owned by foreigners. Okay? It's Mexican business, but it's all owned, started, directed by foreigners. The automotive industry is dominated by U.S., Japanese, German, and now Korean firms. That was who runs this automotive industry. Human development, they're ranked 52 in the world. 52. That, again, is not near 11. The OECD, which is an organization for economic and coordinated development, okay, rates Mexico as number 2 in economic disparity. At the bottom, okay, the numbers going the other way. They are just one up from the bottom of being having as to economic disparity. The top 10% of the population here has 36% of the wealth. The bottom 10% has 1.4. The GDP that comes from taxes, I'm sorry, no, this is the one. 22% of the GDP for the whole country is in the federal district. It's where all the government workers live. All those people get double the salary of the rest of the people in the country, but 22% of the GDP is right there. They're getting $26,000 a person in the federal district. In Chiapas, they get $3,000. So there's a big difference between 26 and 3. Okay. Transparency. The nice word for being honest and corruption and things like that. How transparent you are. Okay. Is Mexico 11? No. Are they 20? No. Are they 50? No. Are they 80? No, they're 106. 106. I mean, that's a long way from 11, right? That's the major problem in this country. The major problem. And I see the only solution is education, because I love young people. I mean, they're enthusiastic. Sometimes they're unrealistic, but they think tomorrow is better. And that's where Mexico should be going. Another index here is, they have an index on punishment. There's a crime, okay? And this woman here, stole all the money from the bank. She's an embezzler, right? But in Mexico, as far as being punished for a crime, Mexico is 59 out of 60. And they have a judicial system that doesn't work, okay? The highest bidder wins the verdict in Mexico. If you haven't seen it already. Okay, tax revenue is 20% of GDP. One of the big challenges, there's a very large informal economy, they call it, okay? I mean, you see the guy pushing his cart down that street, night and day with popsicles, okay? You see that guy, with a wheelbarrow load with tortillas, okay? I mean, 35% of the people are self-employed. So there's a large part of the population that earns something, but they're not known. A lot of them don't even have an ID card. I mean, I find sometimes that, well, anyway. So anyway, the informal economy is a big problem. Poverty in Mexico is between 45 and 50%. 45 and 50% are in poverty. Okay, all right. Corruption is estimated to be costing 10% of the GDP here, okay? That's somewhere between 120 and 200 billion dollars a year. That's the corruption cost in this country. So every family, if you have 5 people in a family, because I've been doing my work in house to house, checking water and wastewater and all that, and I've been counting people to find out the real number of people, because the government doesn't know the real number of people in these villages. And the average number of people in a village house is 5, okay? Some are 1, some are 18, but 5 is the average. And so for a 5-person family, it costs them 240 pesos per day to pay for the corruption. Corruption, okay? And there's the amount of money that goes into corruption. All right, there's highly inefficient agriculture. Agriculture uses 18% of the labor of the country. It uses 80% of the water of the Lumber River, and it produces 4% of the GDP. I mean, what would you think about a business like that, okay? I mean, it's not managed right, okay? Agricultural GDP back in 1970 used to be 25% instead of 4%. It's going downhill. The very best future for Mexico is agriculture, because most of the rest of the world can't make its food. Mexico has the sun. You can make a lot of food here, okay? I have greenhouses, organic greenhouse up in New Mexico with one of my 6 engineer sons. And, in a 1-acre greenhouse, I told you before, we produce 8,000 pounds of tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers a week, 8,000 pounds. Right? we produce 20 times as much food in an acre in that greenhouse as you do in the farmer's field out here. For 1/3 of the water, 1/5 of fertilizer. As of last year, we're the first kosher greenhouse in the United States. Because, you know, the Israelis are finding their greenhouses are getting shot up every day. And so, I think I might have mentioned about a year or a year and a half ago, we're out in the desert, you know, and most of the people out there are Hispanic, you know, and a lot of them don't even speak English. And the cell phones are ringing, you know, there's 6 guys in black clothes with funny looking hats and canes, you know, they're out by your gate. and so we went to the gate, you know, and, you know, who are you? Well, you know, we're the rabbinical council, you know, from Chicago, and we're, you know, wanting to have you consider growing kosher food here for us. So now we have a 20-year contract for a minimum of $1 million a year to do that for that. Okay. I'm afraid that, you know, Jim's watch is really messed up. You know, I want to talk about water and food, so let's go as far as I can. But the bad news with water is that 97.5% of the water is salt water, right? Salt water, okay? So there's only 2.5% of the water in the whole world that is fresh water, okay? All right? And so 2% of the 2.5% is frozen, okay? It's mostly in the Antarctic, okay? All right? So there's a half of 1% of world water that's available, you know, for humans to survive, for plants to grow, and things like that. The good news is that we're using half of that in the world, okay? I mean, the way the news goes, you might think that we're using it all up, but the thing is, we have tapped all the easy water, okay? There's water around in Canada, there's water around in Brazil, there's water around in other parts of the world, which is abundant, okay? But it's in a different location, right? And so the problem today is the mismatch of people to water, right? When I go to villages here, like I'm doing right now in Mexico, every one of these mountain villages is linked to a spring. That village started because they were either next to the lake or they were next to a spring, okay? And so I'm now trying to get money for the villages by selling their spring water as very valuable mineralized water, okay? And so I'm experimenting with 3 villages right now to try and put them in the business of selling the spring water. But springs were the reason those villages are there, okay? And so we originally always built a city or a town next to a lake, next to a river, like that, okay? But then we started to move around the country, and we started drilling wells and building dams and things like that. And we now have a world where a lot of people are not near the water, right? And so my main solution is that we as a nation have agreed that electricity can't be made in every town, and we're willing to run power lines across the country to bring electricity from this side to that side, and if that side is low, back it up with this side. So we have about 1.5 million miles of electrical lines across the country. Okay, we agree to that. Okay. We have we have 500,000 of them, 500,000 miles of those lines. For gas and oil lines, we have 1.5 million miles of gas and oil pipelines around the country, because we know not every state has an oil well, okay? And so we're moving either refined product or raw product around the country. So it is becoming time to move water around the country, from places that have water to places that don't have water. And this is politically, you know, a tough issue, okay? Because the water is owned by the state, okay? Whereas the stuff that's in the electric power line is not owned by the state. The stuff in the gas pipeline is not owned by the state. But now we have states, you know, struggling with each other. So anyway, we have to work out all the possibilities of reuse, okay? I mean, it's obvious that our wastewater can be processed again. And if you go to San Nicolas over here, we have a wastewater plant, and the water process at San Nicolas does not go in the lake, it goes up to the golf course. Right? And that's an ideal solution, okay? I mean, it's reused again, all right? We can reuse a lot of water if we're careful with it, all right? industrial water can also be processed to be reused by agriculture. Desalination. 10, 15 years ago, desalination was economically not possible, okay? But we had some technological changes, particularly we put this water under pressure, we try to push it through a piece of plastic, and all the salt stays behind and the water goes through. That huge energy was being wasted when they turned the valve off and let the wastewater flow back to where it came from, okay? So now what they do is they let the water, when you're done pushing the water, and you can't get any more water out, they let it go over here and go through a turbine, and turns the turbine and makes electricity, right? And so the cost went down, and so now it's economical in the world to bring ocean water, I think, up to 50 miles into a country. And so major cities are along the ocean. So I see ocean water, that 97.5%, being usable for domestic water, okay? Domestic water, okay? But when we talk about farm water, agricultural water, you're talking about 8 times as much water, okay? Right? I can have water for 1 acre of irrigated crop or water for 18 people. That's the trade-off in the world, okay? And so more and more as people come and more people have a boat, water's going to have to move from the agriculture side in. One of my ideas that some people think crazy is I want to pump back the Mississippi River. And so I spent about 2 months of calculations. The Mississippi River comes down through the United States, it drains 40% of the country, it arrives here at the Gulf of Mexico, and when it falls over the edge, it's salt water, right? Before it falls over the edge, it's fresh water. Right? If I tap the Mississippi up here, you know, the people in St. Louis are going to complain that maybe I took part of the water and now the water's not as good as it was, you know, so I can't do it there. And I come on down here to Vicksburg, Mississippi, they don't want me to do it either, you know. But if I come to the very edge here, there's nobody there, right? Right. If I can pump back 4% of the Mississippi, I can take care of 39 million people in California. 4%. If I can pump back 10% of the Mississippi, I can take care of every human being west of the Mississippi. Right? And so what I calculated were 2 12-foot diameter pipes going across Louisiana, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Okay? And then they run spurs off them going north up to the other cities like that. And so I use a nuclear power plant to push that. In fact, I have a pump station every 60 miles. Okay? And I have a man-made lake every 60 miles, so that if a pump stops, I keep 3 days of water there to give me 3 days to can't be right. A pain in the butt, right? All right. Anyway, we need to promote rain-fed agriculture. Okay. All right. I mean, how smart is it to raise a cow in the desert? You know? Yeah. I mean, I'm in Pennsylvania, you know, and we're mowing grass, you know, like twice a day, you know. I mean, it's better to keep the cows east of the Mississippi, okay? All right. California is in a big drought right now, okay? All right, in a couple of years, they're complaining, and they say, oh, you got to say California. That's where your vegetables, that's where your fruits come, okay? But guess who has the most irrigated land in California? If you dig down the numbers, what is the greatest use of irrigated land in California? What is it? Alfalfa. Hay, okay? They're growing hay in the desert, okay? All right? I'm mowing grass twice a day in Pennsylvania. And you know what? 1/3 of that hay in California, which is the biggest acreage they have, they sell to China. Is that stupid? Huh? I mean, we're basically taking the water of the Colorado River, you know? I mean, it basically takes 1,000 kilos of water to make a kilo of grain. Okay? So I can ship a kilo of grain to China, and I've effectively shipped, you know, 1,000 kilos of water. Okay? I mean, it's stupid things. Okay? So California, you know, I'm voting it down for water, you know, until they get rid of the hay. Right? You know, I'm voting it down for their almonds and their cashews and their pecans, which can be grown in other places. Right? The other thing, you know, you gotta pick on somebody. Pick on a lady here. Huh? Yeah. Well, this lady here, you know, she lives out here on the flat plain, okay? And so where rivers are, is usually where the ground's the flattest, right? And that's where agriculture was the flattest. But now what covers all the flat land in the country, okay? Housing, right? Because I'm a building contractor, it's easier for me to build a house on a flat piece of land. The water pipes just go around pretty easy, the roads go around pretty easy. We have to move you out of the flatland and up on the hill. Because we ultimately, in the long term, need your land to provide agriculture for the people. That's what we need to do, okay? It won't happen overnight, you know. But, you know, with enough machine guns, we probably can do it, you know? Yeah. Okay. The other thing is this, is we should have guidance that tells us what crop will give me the most bucks for 1,000 gallons of water, okay? We shouldn't be raising hay and stupid things that give you a little bit of money, all right? I mean, like I tell the Mexicans here, you and that God called maize or maize, okay? I mean, you can either raise 4 acres of corn or 1 acre of tomatoes and get the same money. But 3/4 of your water would not be needed, all right? So we have to think in those terms. All right. I don't know where I'm just going to go on the land and soil, and I'll have to just sort of abbreviate this and forget it. Land and soil, you know, the ground over here is good for certain plants, right? The ground over there is good for certain plants. Not all ground is good for all the same plants, right? When my son and I set up greenhouses in New Mexico, we're 4,000-foot elevation. We have a lot of sun. We have a lot of wind, right? We tried 10 different tomato seeds to find out which one liked New Mexico, right? Another seed might like some other place. We don't know exactly why they like another place. But you gotta match the seed to the climate, the altitude, and all those things. You gotta match the seed to the soil. Okay? See? If this is a chili marron plant, this lady here, you know, she's a green pepper. Okay? I say, hey, you know, green pepper, what do you like? And she says, I really like potassium. Okay? And a little smidgen of sulfur, you know. And, oh, maybe some calcium, you know. So when I do hydroponic greenhouses, I can make a diet for Miss Green Pepper here, okay? And she loves it, okay? And she tastes wonderful, right? And she grows wonderful. You know, and then I go over here, and she wants lettuce, okay? You know, I mean, what I'm growing for the Jewish people right now is 66,000 heads of romaine lettuce in the greenhouse, okay? You know, they want different things, right? They have an appetite. You can put them all on the ground over there, but they're not all going to grow very well. And so we have to start matching up the climate, the soil, the rain, and things like that to optimize agriculture in the world. And so I'm going to stop here because Jim's on fire here in a minute. And I just want to talk about energy and pensions. So I'll also say one thing about pensions. Okay? One thing about pensions. In the USA, 70% of pensions are underfunded. Okay. In other words, they don't have the money in the box to pay your pension, okay? All right? And so they passed a law 14 December this past year, 5-6 months ago. Do you know what the law says? Is that if you have a pension from the ABC Corporation and they are down to 80% of funding, they can cut your pension. Okay? So there's 10 million people coming who are going to get a pension cut probably in the coming year. But, you know, nobody's talked about it, I don't think. Okay? So I'd have you think about pensions. You know, so if you're young people, don't count on anything until you're 85. Okay? But you know, for those of you lucky people out here who are 80, okay, they aren't going to touch you. Okay? They know how you vote. You know, and they will. Jim, you want these people to talk.
We'll take a couple of questions. We know we're running over, but he's such a good entertainer.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Very enjoyable presentation.
Thank you. I was going to talk about this extinct animals.
Well, that's getting too close to home. When you were talking about the water, you mentioned that there's arsenic and lead in the water. So my question is it an organic form or organic form?
Okay, that's a good question, especially for somebody who knows what he's talking about. But because there is a difference between the lethality of organic and inorganic. And so I have to look on my sheets to see what we have. I can't answer the question, but I'm aware of that difference. And as I believe, it's the organic type that's more lethal. Right? Correct? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we used to have those old ladies that took in boarders, right? And they fed them to arsenic every day until they got their pension. Yeah. Okay.
Please stand.
You talked about the power grids and such things going across the country.
Yeah, all of.
Why can't we decentralize every building? Produce its own electricity with solar or wind or...
Okay. Yeah, good. All right. At this time, wind works. Okay? Wind works in the right place. Okay? All right. There are places in the United States where you are getting about 8-mile-an-hour average wind, and that's enough to economically turn the blades and make a windmill work. Okay? All right. I'm out there in the desert. I paid $2,000 for a met station. We recorded the weather, detailed hour by hour for a whole year, and we found out that we got bursts of wind. It would come like 4 hours, and then be quiet. I don't know who's out there puffing, but in New Mexico, it would come and then it would go. And there was Sunday night, and we found that overall we didn't have enough wind to justify the economics of putting up windmills. But there are places for wind, and we should use that. Almost all your coastal areas, when you go to the ocean and land, there's a lot of air like that there. Solar still is something that, if you get solar panels, I got to pay for them because it's all subsidized, and it's not economical. It's around, let's say, probably down to about $6 a watt now, something like that. And I got the numbers wrong. Yeah, it costs you that much for a solar panel system. I think about $6 a watt. But the price is about 5 or 6 times what you pay for electricity out of a current power plant. And so solar is not there. Solar will get there because we are people that keep looking and keep picking and finding ways to do things, okay? And they're getting thin films that they can spray on and things like this that do different things. But solar I mean, Germany jumped into solar early, and Germany is having an economic breakdown because of the high cost of utilities. The people are screaming, and so they drop their fossil fuel, they drop their nuclear, and then right next door, about a foot away, is France, with the most nuclear in the world. So it doesn't help you a lot if you think you're going to protect yourself from nuclear. You just put away from those guys. But anyway, I think in time we'll do some of that, but not now.
Okay, we'll take these 2 questions and then we'll stop.
I would like to know where
Hold it
to go.
close and speak loud.
Where to go to test the water from well here?
Okay, I would go to a commercial laboratory in Guadalajara, and if you do a simple bacteria test, about $20, okay? But if you want to get into heavy metals, which take a atomic spectrometer device to do this, it's about $100. Okay. What I do is I put a couple bottles of water in my suitcases when I go north to different villages, and I test it in Minnesota in a commercial lab. But there are good labs in Guadalajara. I don't trust the government because whenever I find bad things, they then come and they find good things.
Is China investing in Mexico?
Say again?
Is China investing in Mexico?
Absolutely. China has bags of money, okay? Wheelbarrows of money, and they're investing all over the world. They're picking up natural resources on every continent. They're picking up agricultural land in Africa because it's the cheapest. And next they're picking up agricultural land here in Mexico and South America. Because China cannot feed itself. So they're going to other parts of the world to grow the food to bring it back to China. They aren't in the United States. In the United States, people that are serious investors invest in farmland. Okay? But in the United States, the price is too high compared to other parts of the world that China can go. A couple of years ago, I remember you know, there are Chinese running this thing and Chinese running that thing and Chinese, they stay sort of hidden, okay? You don't see their face. You know, you have to go through a couple doors to find them in the back room, and it's Chinese, okay? I was building a bridge over a river, and I was trying to get a hold of a grader, a bulldozer, you know, the Chinese had them, okay? The Africans had them, but they drive them until they break, and then they push off the side of the road. But the Chinese fix them, okay? And so the Chinese are everywhere, okay? When I was in the Vietnam War, the Chinese owned every corner in Saigon, okay? So the key business parts were all owned by the Chinese. All the trucks in Vietnam were owned by the Chinese, okay? Right? All the water balloons that they were selling to the American troops were owned by the Chinese, and they paid the enemy to not mess with them. Okay? Don't mess with our water balloon pills. Okay? And so Chinese are very, very clever. You know, I have 6 sons, and the one son who I work with on the agriculture, he has a PhD in agriculture. He has a Chinese wife. She's a chemical engineer. Her father's a civil engineer. Yeah. My 6 sons are engineers. We don't understand those other people.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. If you want me to send you all my notes, give me an email and I'll send you all my notes, okay? Anything? Yeah.